Black Bolt and White Flare are almost here, and today we're going to be taking a look at an updated Gardevoir EX list, really building around the new Jellicent EX and Frillish cards that have been introduced into the format in one of these new sets. I think it's going to be a real upgrade to Gardevoir. It was a deck that already could sit behind a Budgie and try and build like quite a good board and really lean into the slowing effects of Item Lock. And Frillish is basically a Budgie with a pre-attached Bravery Charm and a pre-attached Vitality Band. So it's essentially just a bigger, more damaging Budgie. And it means that a lot of the time Gardevoir is now going to really be able to win the Item Lock war, the Budgie Lock war, because you're going to be doing a bit more damage. You're going to have much more HP to be able to sponge Budgies, but also because the deck naturally builds around Munkidori, you can play around with that damage a lot more and try and take out a Budgie and then item lock something else to prevent your opponent item locking you back on the following turn. So I think Frillish is one of the biggest upgrades to this deck. It's almost worth it outside of having the Jellicent. Frillish itself is a fantastic improvement just for winning those Budgie wars. But Jellicent EX as well is another addition. It's a 270 HP Pokemon, so it's not quite as tanky as Gardevoir, but it does at least stand the test of being able to live against some hits that sometimes Clefairy and Mew aren't going to be able to live against. And yeah, its ability stopping your opponent from playing tool cards and item cards whilst Jellicent is in the active position is going to be really, really powerful. Obviously, they can get this out of the way. I think we're already starting to see things like Iron Bundle come into lists, starting to see more Boss's Orders, all that kinds of stuff. So people will adapt to Jellicent being in the format. But on any of these turns where you're able to pair it with an Iono or something like that, you can really try and lock your opponent out whilst not having to settle for a low power attack in, Frillish's attack or even Budgie's attack. Now you can still be doing a decent amount of damage. The attack dealing 80 damage for 2 energy or 160 damage for 4 energy. Obviously, that's not great for trying to, the damage efficiency, but with things like Lillie's Clefairy, you can actually end up knocking out a Dragapult in one hit with 4 energy, and obviously with the Munkidoris that you have on your board, inevitably, you're able to move a lot of the damage off that you would end up putting onto Jellicent because of its heavy attack cost, and sort of buffing this damage up a little bit, so it actually can do a little bit more, potentially even one-shot some low HP EX Pokemon, things like Fezandipitis and Mew EXs of the opponents, as well as across a couple of turns being able to one-shot a lot of high HP EX Pokemon as well. So there is a lot to like about the Jellicent as well. I think the build in general has had to cut some corners to be able to fit in these extra cards. I think there's naturally a little bit less consistency here and there, having to cut down to the supporter, down to 2 Arven as your additional draw supporters. Obviously having to cut a couple of corners here and there in terms of ball search cards. I've never been a huge fan of cutting Buddy Poffin, but now that we don't play Budgie and we play Frillish instead, because Frillish has 80 HP, it serves it's even less of a purpose. So I do think you have to cut some corners, but I think the upsides of how impactful early game Frillish attacks can be in terms of being able to win that item lock war, I think it is worth it. You can also see we're playing one of the brand new Air Balloon to try and increase our Arven outs to being able to get into a turn 1 Frillish. Obviously, only having a couple of Arven does make that a little bit more difficult, but it does give you an option that if you start with Arven, you can search for Nest Ball plus Air Balloon and get into Frillish early on and still activate that item lock quite quickly, whereas normally you would spend your energy in attaching and retreating. Now you have the Air Balloon to try and mitigate that and instead attach your energy to Frillish to start attacking. So yeah, it's a bit of a different build. It feels quite similar to Gardevoir Banette back when that was an archetype alongside the regular Gardevoir builds. So it's going to be really interesting to see whether this takes over or whether we still have a more traditional Gardevoir build as the front runner. I think in general, the Jellicent and the Frillish do improve your matchups pretty much across the board for the most part. But having to cut those corners on consistency here and there could mean that Gardevoir is a bit more of a fragile deck in general, so it might not be worth playing these cards. I think only time will tell. A lot of the Japanese results so far have implemented Jellicent, so it looks like it is quite popular in the early tournaments with the black and white meta. So we'll have to wait and see if it does become the way to play Gardevoir or just a different alternative way. We've got 3 battles coming up for you where we're going to be playing this deck, so you'll be able to see where we're able to implement and use the item locking as you would before, or maybe a little bit more beneficially, and also where maybe we've had to cut some corners with the consistency to see how the deck flows in general when you're not able to lean into those item locking assets and have to play the regular Gardevoir game plan, whether you're able to still keep up that game plan, or whether the consistency cuts that we've had to make do end up taking away from the deck overall. Alrighty then, kicking off this first game, we have me playing Gardevoir up against Joe playing Dragapult Charizard, one of his pet decks right now. Always good to get the reps, like Joe said in our previous video, always good to get some reps against some Dragapult variants. Joe kicking us off with a Buddy Poffin just for a couple of Dreepies. Yeah, starting to build a board, wants to try and establish as many of these Dreepies as possible ahead of any potential item lock from myself, I guess. Like I mentioned in the deck analysis, looks like it should be a pretty simple turn from Joe as well, just an attachment and a pass. Like I said in the deck analysis, it's a little bit more difficult to get into the item lock with Gardevoir now, especially given that you need like a tool or an extra ball search card, because it's obviously we don't play Buddy Poffin anymore, so it is a little bit more difficult. But in general, the benefits of having Frillish instead of Budgie are like really positive, so definitely worth trying to still get that item lock set up. My turn was pretty simple, just benching a monkey and attaching a dark, and Joe has responded with an Arven for a TM Evo. To evolve a couple of his dudes up, that's one of the best things that you can do against a deck that does try and present item lock against you. It means that Joe doesn't need to worry about not being able to use his candies anymore, can always guarantee a Dragapult and a Charizard on the following turn, which is great news for him, to be honest. Looks like I managed to top deck an Arven of my own. Gonna see what we search for. Eyeing up that Secret Box. Still feels like Secret Box pretty much unlocks Gardevoir because you need so many individual pieces here and there. Looks like I'm going to be grabbing the Evo of my own and indeed a Secret Box. I can't quite see what else is in the hand for me, but hoping there's going to be some decent cards to discard here. Secret Box, like I say, really unlocks the deck in terms of trying to fit all the pieces together and still be able to develop your board whilst also having outs to a supporter on the following turn. Obviously, not having the Refinement Kirlia anymore means that the draw power of this deck is pretty much entirely supporter based. So Secret Box is very important. Looks like it's an Ultra Ball, a Jelly, and a Rare Candy going with the Secret Box. I think I remember this game. I was debating trying to set up a super aggressive Gardevoir, but then realised that it was going to leave me with a pretty poor hand on the following turn, so just decided to try and weave together a way of, or I think my intention here is to try and weave together a way of getting at least a Kirlia on the board, if not a couple, to try and guarantee that Gardevoir plus supporter for the following turn. So yeah, playing that Arven, playing the Artisan to get a second Ralts. Also going to be searching for a Frillish with the Nest Ball. I actually think this was a mistake looking back on it. I think the time has probably gone for Frillish already, even though we're only like turn 2 or turn 3, whatever turn we're on. I think the time for Frillish is probably already gone because Joe's been able to Evo, plus also now has the Charizard, which is an imminent threat. It makes Jellicent a lot worse. Plus also this is just potentially some free prizes for Joe on the following turn or on a later turn with Dragapult. So I think this was probably a mistake, as Joe is able to piece together a Candy Charizard, which means he still has access to that Charmeleon for a Charizard. If I do go down the item locking route, which is always good to have, an extra way of getting into Charizard, which is often the accelerator of energy to try and get you into some pretty powerful attacks. First Dracloak of the turn does see... I didn't quite see what he took, but does have another Ultra Ball to follow up for a second Dracloak, so really starting to churn through the deck now. Again, finding all of these cards ahead of any potential item lock is obviously just really good because it means that you're so much less worried when Frillish does come into play and start causing you issues. One of the biggest things I've found challenging with Gardevoir as of late, especially the lists that have cut Drifloon, is dealing with things like Charizard. It's a huge Pokemon, and without a way of having very high damage, it's really difficult to deal with Charizard. You don't want to have to leave it too late because it just scales as you go through the game. But similarly, you do need to deal with it. Like, you sometimes just can't deal with it for a couple of turns, and it can just kind of farm, especially given that it one-shots Gardevoir so easily. So yeah, I do think that is a challenge for Gardevoir in general at the moment, and one that I'm still trying to piece together whilst I learn a little bit more about Gardevoir. I think my best plan, I think a lot of the time the best plan in the early game against Charizards is actually just trying to mind bend them. So I think that's why I'm searching for another Munkidori here, so that if I have to attach for turn to attack with this one, I can still have a Munkidori on the following turn to potentially move some damage off. But I think ideally, I'd like to be able to find a Gardevoir here to attack with the bench one so I can preserve the Dark Energy. Do find Fezandipiti off of my research, which is good. A few more cards to try and draw. I think I didn't see how many Psychic were in the bin there. It might have been one, it might have been two. I also can't see a Gardevoir right now. I do have a Counter Catcher, which is good. Have the Earthen Vessel, so I'm going to be able to get a couple of energy out. So maybe we are just going to have to be, or are just going to have to settle with attacking with the active one. Gusting up the Charmeleon is kind of fine. It has 2 retreat, so it might like force him into having to play Charizard to move this, which would be good. Admittedly, it would then just be another Charizard I have to deal with, but I think I'm always going to have to deal with a Charizard, so yeah. Okay, I did hit the Gardevoir, so I am able to attack with the bench Munkidori, which means we are able to move the damage off with the active Munkidori. And I think probably, yeah, starting to set the Charizard up with some damage is one of the best things we can do. Arguably could have mind-bended the Charizard and the active, considering that if Joe evolves here, he's going to get out of the confusion anyway. But I think, again, I was just trying to get Joe to use that Charizard if possible, so that then there was going to be no surprise attackers, and then we could, I guess, could try and deal with the board that was in front of me rather than having to deal with like an extra Dragapult that might get set up or anything like that. So yeah, Joe did have the Charizard. It might have been a mistake. Maybe I was meant to just attack into the Charizard that was already in the active, but then equally, if Joe already had the evolution, could have easily just evolved and done kind of the same thing, retreated and attacked with the fresh one anyway. So I think it was probably much of a muchness. I can't remember. I think my counter catcher was post research, so maybe it was a waste of a counter catcher is the only thing. Joe's done a lot of drawing this turn. 3 Dracloaks into a research is pretty good. It's just going to be another attack from this Charizard. And Joe is down to 4 prizes. That means that Mew EX will actually deal 240 right now. So if I'm able to find a Mew EX and build up 3 energy onto it, I can potentially copy Charizard with Mew EX and knock this out for 2 prizes to at least stay level in the race. Obviously, that will mean then losing my Mew more than likely. So we'll then have to probably reuse the Mew later on to either knock out a Dragapult or knock out a Charizard. So might need to find a way of recovering that. But I think there's no other way I can really win this game. Is I'm going to have to just get aggressive with Mew and hope that an Iono can stick later on in the game once he's potentially evolved in some Dragapults or anything like that. Looks like I'm going to Iono here, start off that process, try and stop Joe from pulling together any crazy combos. But yeah, I think one of the only things I can really try and rely on here is KOing a Charizard, then trying to KO the other Charizard with the Mew again if Joe goes down to 2 prizes in a similar fashion, and then hope that maybe like a Bravery Charm or something sticks on the Mew to prevent Dragapult knocking it out and try and win from there. It's a long-winded and convoluted win con, but I think it's the best win con I've got right now. Do set up second Gardevoir, so at least we're not going to be in a difficult position should Joe Gust KO my only Gardevoir. Yeah, I'm going to be Monkey onto the active and then copying with Genome Hacking for the knockout to at least level up the prize trade. I know I'm going to be going down another 2 prizes here, but again, if I'm able to force Joe to do that with a Charizard, that would be good. Joe's promoting the Dracloak though, so probably has access to Dragapult already, which would be difficult because it means that I'm going to have to find Counter Catcher as well this turn. So yeah, pretty complicated, difficult matchup to deal with if your opponent is able to start getting set up with their Charizards early on in the game. Joe's searching for a 4th Dracloak. Gonna evolve into the Dragapult. Does get that Unfair Stamp as well to force me down to 2 cards, which again do have the Fez on board at least, but is a little bit awkward given that Yeah, given that the deck has very little draw outside of supporters these days. And then Joe can start using Recon Directive post using that Unfair Stamp to start building that hand back up after I owned him on the previous turn. Another Luminous onto the board to, I guess didn't have access to Munkidori. My Artisan is in play, so I could have searched for it, so I guess his one monkey must have been prized, or maybe it's been discarded and I hadn't spotted it yet. So yeah, just KOing the Mew here. Yeah, I think my only line really is trying to gust up the Charizard to knock it out and leave my Mew in the active with like a, I guess a Bravery Charm, and just hope that Joe doesn't have Gust to take out Frillish plus Munkidori. We can move the damage off of Munkidori, so that's good. So yeah, if I can do that, and even if I, like, especially even then if I can evolve the Frillish into Jellicent, we should actually be in a pretty good spot, because there should be no easy prizes, because Joe didn't put any pre-damage on the Fezandipiti, so wouldn't be able to Gust KO the Fezandipiti here. So yeah, if I'm able to weave together this combo, which is a big combo, but if I'm able to weave together out to getting the Mew back and getting it back on board, which I do have, there's the Night Stretcher right there. Looks like I'm debating it here, but yeah, if I'm able to weave together the Night Stretcher plus the Counter Catcher plus the Bravery Charm, yeah, looks like I missed it. I think I now remember. So I had the way of recovering the Mew EX, but didn't have the Gust, and obviously that meant that basically whatever happened, Charizard was going to be knocking me out. So yeah, difficult game, difficult end to the series, or difficult end to the game, I should say. But I do think, had I been able to pull together that combo, which was, like I say, was a bit of a complicated combo, but I think I did have a win condition if I was able to Gust KO that Charizard, because from there was no free prizes on Joe's board or on my board for Joe. And then at that point, it would have probably still been difficult, because I'd already discarded the Clefairy as well, so would have then had to potentially try and buy a turn or two attacking with Gardevoir instead. But you know, there was potential outs still. I think it still would have been difficult, but there was potential outs to me getting there. So yeah, interesting game. Jellicent didn't feature too much, but again, I think it still showed that the deck can function, even though we have had to make some sort of trims and cuts to corners here and there to try and build in all of the cards that we need to get Jellicent into the deck. So yeah, still showed that the deck is still functional and still able to be played to a relatively high success, hopefully, in terms of the general strategy that Gardevoir likes to employ. So as I've been chatting, we've been setting up another game, and this time we're up against Raging Bolt. I had a pretty simple turn. It was just bench your Ralts, attach to a Munkidori, and pass it over to Joe, who is playing the Raging Bolt side this time. I really have to hope that Joe doesn't have an explosive turn one and take a one prize, because the Baby Bolt can easily take another one prize and get Joe back onto the even prize trade, which is what Raging Bolt likes to be dealing with. So I have to hope that Joe isn't able to knock out this Munkidori here, and yeah, really get aggressive kicking things off. Looks like it's going to be a Vessel to start things off. Having to discard a Sada will help in terms of trying to avoid a turn one knockout, which is good. Discarding of the Sada, yeah, kind of indicates that we're going to be getting a Squawk here, and then using the Ditto's ability to get a baby Raging Bolt. Does have another supporter in hand. Okay, cool. Has the Crispin. So this is technically one extra energy, because going to mean that we're able to attach an energy and potentially put one into hand. Looks like we just have the attachment from the Crispin and then another fighting energy in hand to attach the Raging Bolt. Pow padding back in the Sada, so that's good. Decided to leave the Crispin out, knowing I guess that most of the time Sada is going to be better. And then, yeah, just squawking away the Grass Energy and Budgie for a fresh 6 cards. Did discard the Grass Energy and hit a Teal Mask plus the Energy Retrieval, so it does get the Teal Dance, and then just passes it over to me. I'm pretty sure Joe decided not to attack this turn, just so I didn't have any monkey damage to be playing with. I think we were just talking about whether it was right to attack or not, and I think we concluded that, yeah, pretty much Doesn't really accelerate the game plan, so just passing it back to me should hopefully prevent any additional Munkidori damage here and there. So, a draw from my part. It looks like I top-decked an Arven here, which is good. I don't know whether I top-decked it, actually. I might have already had it in hand, but it looks like I have an Arven, I should say, at least. So it at least guarantees me, I guess, an evolution if that's the route I want to go down. Could potentially go down the route of Frillish if I have access to Air Balloon and an Energy in hand. I could get Nest Ball plus Air Balloon. My hand is Double Candy, Counter Catcher, and I didn't see the other two cards. I think there was a Rescue Stretcher in there. Sorry, a Night Stretcher in there, maybe. So the hand not overly conducive to doing too much. Maybe it was a mistake to even attach his energy on turn 1. Got a Kirlia and Night Stretcher. I could also go for the going for the Evo plus Nest here. I could actually go for an Evo playstyle. I could evolve the Ralts into a Kirlia and just evolve the Kirlia into a Gardevoir EX straight away and make it hopefully quite difficult for Joe to take a 1 prize knockout here in the, can either just attach an energy to take a 1 prize knockout and hopefully make it difficult for him to be able to take a 2 prize knockout. If I lose the Guardia, I probably lose the game anyway. So yeah, and just putting a Kirlia down or putting another Ralts down and getting a Kirlia or getting 2 Kirlias wouldn't do too much either. So I think I'm saving that Nest Ball to hopefully bait Joe into, well, not bait Joe into, but Joe's going to hopefully take a knockout here to start accelerating his game plan, and then I can Nest Ball out a Fez. And that's pretty much exactly what Joe does. He has another Crispin, attaches a couple of extra energy onto the board, and then takes the knockout on the Munkidori. Does offset Joe's prizes to be on odd prizes now, which is good for me, because I can try and hopefully throw a couple of awkward single prizes here that Joe maybe has to take to keep him on that odd prize trade, or just try and have be attacking with Gardevoirs to make him to force him to be on that even to force him to be on the even prizes. So yeah, looks like I am gonna Fez and then pop down a Munkidori though. So yeah, gonna have to get some more single prizes into play. It was kind of always gonna happen, but there could have been angles where just taking that single prize could have been a little bit difficult for Joe to deal with. Counter capturing up the Teal Mask and then ripping a Research, discarding the couple of Candy, which is actually quite scary because if Joe's able to knock this Guardi out this turn, that means that we're not going to be getting a Guardi on the following turn, even with a Ralts this turn, so that's kind of awkward. Just looking through the hand, it looks like I'm going to be Ultra Balling away a Devo, which is pretty useless in this matchup. Oh, maybe not the Devo. No, 2 more Researches actually by the looks of it. Oh, okay, I'm thinning the hand if I can all the way down to thinning the hand down to try and get rid of as many cards from UEX. Attach the Bravery Charm to the active here. Obviously Bravery Charm doesn't work on the active, so there was argument for attaching it to a Mew or a Fez, but the other thing I wanted to keep open is I was probably never going to be putting Air Balloon on this Guardi because I want to be able to get the energy back into the discard pile if I ever have to attack with it. I think it was probably a mistake to play the Bravery Charm here though. It was probably just an oversight from me that it should just be somewhere else. I wanted to keep Air Balloon basically open, but there was I think it was a mistake to do this. Obviously, because Bravery Charm doesn't really do anything here, it is just basically a waste of a tool. So yeah, that was just a bit of a misplay on my part. The Mew was quite kind to us. It did get us into an attacker at least, so we are able to hit with Clefairy. We actually do 180 here, which might seem a little bit useless. But with a Munkidori on the following turn, we can potentially try and take a lot of Joe's energy off the board in 1 turn, which would be good, whilst maintaining strength in our Ionos, because if Joe takes 2 prizes here, is going to be down to 3 prizes, so we can try and have strong Ionos whilst also taking out potentially 4 prizes on Joe's board. Joe's turn gets a little bit pixely here. I apologise for this. It does get better towards the end of the game, don't worry. It's already starting to clear up a little bit now, but yeah, hopefully you feel like you know everything that is on the board. Joe was able to start this turn to start setting up the board a little more. Still only had 1... I think there was only 1 energy in the discard for him to be able to start it on, though. I didn't quite catch whether there was only 1 or not, but it looks like there was, given the state of given the board state. Did hit the Latias to get into the Raging Bolt, and looks like it's just going to be sending 3 energy here to try and get the KO here, leaving the 2 on the active and just getting rid of the 3 on the bench by the look. Oh, sorry, took 1 from the active, but just got rid of 2. I think when we were talking, Joe reflected that it was probably better to get rid of all 3 off of the damaged Ogerpon, because he could see that there was obviously a line here to be able to take potentially a lot of energy off the board here. So yeah, I think could have potentially had an extra energy on the board if he'd attached the extra grass slightly differently, probably to the other Teal Mask Ogerpon. I thin the hand down to be able to draw 3 with Mew, ahead of then hopefully drawing some with Fez. Do hit a Vessel, so we are going to hit a couple of Dark Energy, and then into Fez for another 3 cards. And hopefully from here we can try and pull together a couple of knockouts. We can attach the Dark Energy to Munkidori to take the first 3 prizes, the first 2 prizes on Teal Mask, and then we can actually copy, similar to last game, we can copy the Raging Bolt's attack this time. We can accelerate a load of energy. Yeah, there we go. Accelerating 4 energy, putting a load of damage on, and then we can just copy Raging Bolt's attack to discard and take an additional 2 prizes. So actually we do go ahead in the prize race here. Do hit an Artisan as well, just try and bounce the Stadium to give Joe a little bit more of a headache in terms of bench management, and then take the knockout here. So we are ahead in the prize race. Obviously Joe is probably going to be able to use a 1 prizer here, so we are likely to have to find well, we have no Gust, so this is the other thing, the other downside. This deck doesn't play boss still. It's still an entirely counter catcher deck. So if Joe decides to take a 1 prize here, we're not going to have any gusting, so that's awkward. Joe did hit another area 0, and then yeah, a couple of Raging Bolts. Another Mew, playing the double Mew, and potentially has access to Fez as well. So going to be drawing a lot of cards here. Does have the Sada for 2 onto the 2 benched Bolts. There's an Ultra Ball, I would imagine, for the Fez. Yep, there's going to be the Fez. So we'll have drawn quite a lot of cards here. Double Mew plus Fez plus Sada is oftentimes similar to a Research, plus an additional couple of cards in terms of, or additional couple of energy attachments. So arguably better than a Research right now. Going to be on a Night Stretcher for a Grass Energy. I think was debating attaching to the Raging Bolt here to be able to snipe for 120 to knock out a Munkidori. Yeah, it does attach to the Baby Bolt, and yeah, going to be probably taking out the Munkidori with an energy. So my counter catchers are switched off. Basically, my win con now is trying to find Screamtail to knock out the Squawkabilly. That's basically the only thing I can do here, or knock out the Mew with like a Munkidori. I have an Earthen Vessel, getting a couple of energy out. Do I have a Ball Search card? I can't remember. Yeah, got an Ultra Ball right there, which gives me the Screamtail, which means I can knock out the Squawkabilly for game. So yeah, we were able to get there this time. Again, the item locking stuff didn't really feature too much in this game. In this third game, it will, though. And in general, the list was able to keep up with Raging Bolt, which is obviously really important, one of the best aggressive decks out there. So you want to be able to make sure you've still got a good Raging Bolt matchup, even when you add in these new cards. So on to our final game then, and we're going to be up against Joltik Box. Another pretty aggressive deck, obviously a little bit slower than Raging Bolt, but once it gets set up and gets going, it tends to try and take 6 prizes across 3 turns, whether it's through Pikachu or Iron Hands or whatever that may be. So we'll have to see if the item lock can slow Joe's approach down in this game. I didn't see he was going. I think I won the flip, so we'll be going second here as we flip them over, and I have a Ralts to Joe's Miraidon, who is indeed going first. So yeah, I won the flip, elected to go second, and yeah, over to Joe, who's going to use Tandem Unit, grabbing Joltik and an Iron Hands. Pretty good against Gardy. A lot of the time they're using 1 prize Pokemon, so Iron Hands can be quite an issue. Again, especially if there's no Drifloon in play, it can actually present quite a challenge trying to get 230 damage in 1 turn. Have to use some Munkidori maths and things like that here and there. Looks like Joe has an attachment for the Joltik, but then it's just going to be a pass over to me. I think I can see a Secret Box and an Ultra Ball in the hand, so I think I'm debating which way around I'm doing it. Secret Box almost certainly feels better than Ultra Ball because we can always Secret Box for a Nest Ball, which is kind of what I'm only ever going to be searching for with an Ultra Ball anyway. Looks like I'm discarding a Jelly, a TM Devo, and a Dark Energy. See what this Secret Box grabs us here. I think it's always going to be, well, it is always going to be Artisan because Artisan is the only stadium in the deck. It's probably going to be Air Balloon, I would imagine, because I'm going to hopefully try, yeah, there's the Air Balloon pulled to the front. I'm hopefully going to try and get Item Lock on the go. And then research, and it was a Nest Ball, but I think I end up debating this. Yeah, end up debating this a little bit, and I think I end up putting it back for a different approach. I can see an energy in hand, but I think I end up searching for a Vessel here. Yeah, search for a Vessel here. Given that research is going to be my support of a turn, and we'd had a couple of games where there'd been some issues with me getting energy into the discard, I think I just basically said I'm going to try and build my hand up. It means that I could get to use this Ultra Ball potentially as well. And try and get an additional couple of energy out of the deck and into the bin to make my top decks better, as well as have more options for Gardevoir later on down the line. So Ultra Balling for the Frillish, going to have the Artisan as well. I'm not sure whether I'm going to use the Artisan before my research. No, just researching first. Argument to Artisan first for the Ralts, because I don't want to draw the Ralts, but similarly, I would love to get a Monkey onto the board as well. So if I draw either Monkey or Ralts, I can get the other one. So I think it was fine to research there. Do use the Artisan to grab a Ralts. Did I pick up a Munkidori as well? Or did I? No, it looks like I maybe missed on the Munkidori, which is fine. We don't need it this turn anyway. We are going to have Frillish. Probably, yeah, just going to be item locking here. 20 damage to the Miraidon and over to Joe. Hoping that Joe doesn't have too strong of a hand here. Does have an Arven, which is pretty much all Joe needs. I think he is playing the Air Balloon in this build as well as playing Latias. That's really nice. It means that you're able to still find a way of retreating outside of like Nest Balls and stuff. So Air Balloon is honestly just an upgrade for so many decks. It's such a fantastic card and really, really glad we have it in format. He did grab a Nest Ball as well there, but obviously won't be able to use it. Is going to be Miraidoning for another Iron Hands, Psychic Energy to Iron Hands number 1, and then probably just a Jolting Charge here. Just going to be a Jolting Charge here to start setting up the... going to split the energy, so we've got 3 on one, 2 on another, and basically try and force me to have to evolve this Frillish, and we've already had one Jellicent go, so could potentially try and burn a Night Stretcher from me, or just have to try and find Jellicent to not give Joe a free 2 prizes here. Looks like I'm going to be Arvening to kick things off. I can see a Candy. Yeah, Candy and Evo. Artisan is going to find... I would imagine this will be the turn I get the Munkidori down, because if I'm able to evolve this Frillish, it's going to potentially mean that we can... get the attachment onto the Munkidori. I did grab the Evo, so I guess I'm maybe thinking about going for evolving to Jellicent to continue item lock whilst then going for an Evo play. Do have Candy Guardy though, so may potentially be looking at trying to get a knockout here. Though taking this 1 prize feels really bad. There's ways to take 3 prizes, which but taking this 1 prize right now I think feels really bad. So yeah, just going to search for the Jellicent. Attach the Evo, and do have a Dark Energy for the Munkidori as well, and then just Evo up the Kirlia. And yeah, hope that item lock slows Joe down a little bit. Maybe is unable to find a boss to try and take 2 prizes with Iron Hands on one of the benched Pokemon. Does have a boss though, so is able to boss up Monkey. Goes for the Munkidori rather than the Kirlia. I remember us talking about this a little bit after the game, but yeah, goes for the Kirlia. Sorry, the Munkidori rather than the Kirlia. This obviously unlocks all of his items again because Jellicent's not in the active anymore. So he thins the hand completely down, able to find Latias as well as Nest Ball or Ultra Ball for Mew to start drawing some cards and make things a bit easier for him to draw through the item lock if I continue to try and apply some pressure. And then, yeah, just an happy very much taking the first 2 prizes with Iron Hands here. So a little bit awkward because Munkidori is really important in this matchup. There's not a huge amount of ways of doing a lot of damage, so Munkidori is quite important in this matchup for getting over the line against some of these sort of middling HP EX Pokemon. We do have Nest Ball for a Fez to start off the turn. I think I saw a Counter Catcher in hand, which is actually not that powerful here, given that Joe was able to find that Latias. It means that we can't really boss stall anything and just try and hit it. So best line of play, probably either trying to attack the Iron Hands or trying to attack the Mew here to trying to knock out the Mew to stop Joe's draw. Artisan for a Munkidori. Again, I think it is important to get these Munkidoris down. Getting a load more energy into the bin as well. Do you have the Dark? So I do have the Counter Catcher. I could see Counter Catcher and attack with Guardi EX here. Like Counter Catcher the Mew and attack the Guardi EX here. It looks like I'm just going to go for the Iono. I'm not... looking back on this, I think I should have Counter Catchered the Mew and knocked it out. I guess Joe's going up to more than 3 cards anyway. But if Joe's then able to thin the hand down, it's really easy for him to draw more cards. But if I'm doing this, I have to attack with Jellicent, which means he is going to be item locked. So maybe it's kind of fine anyway, because he needs to basically draw a raw boss to be able to stop the item lock. But yeah, I didn't mind Counter Catcher and attacking with Gardevoir here, because there was no way that Gardevoir was getting knocked out, and we're still worried about boss, but this at least takes some draw away from Joe, so he has to basically sit on whatever hand he has. So it's basically a debate between giving Joe more cards, giving Joe items, or giving Joe access to more cards. Looks like Joe's kicking off the turn. So yeah, I just deal 80 to the Iron Hands, and I can actually clean this up with a Mew on the following turn and take 3 prizes, which means that I can potentially knock out the Joltik for 1 prize at some point with a Munkidori, and then I've taken 4 prizes, and then I can just close the game out by knocking out the Mew or something. So yeah, that's not bad. Joe's just going to deal 160 back. I did move the 2 damage to the Miraidon. I think on reflection, what I should have done is move the 2 damage to the active hit. Like, the Miraidon was probably never going to be a target, so I should have moved the 2 damage to the Iron Hands, because then it would mean this turn I could knock out the Joltik and the Iron Hands. Whereas now I can't do both of those things, because I only have space for 1 Munkidori on the board, so I'm going to have to spend my Munkidori putting 3 on the active to then take the Iron Hands KO with Mew. So yeah, I think that was a slight mistake. I think the 20 damage on the Miraidon was inconsequential, and I should have put it onto the active instead, because it would have opened up being able to take 4 prizes here potentially, which would have been good. But yeah, again, another pretty simple turn. One thing that's really nice about Jellicent is usually it's bad when Pokemon have high retreat costs, but it means that energy really don't get trapped on Jellicent, which is really nice. It means that you're able to get them back into the discard and attack with something else once you're done trying to item lock the opponent. So whilst it's usually a negative, I think it's a real positive for Jellicent, to be honest. Same with Frillish. Yeah, so this is the issue. Joe is then able to Ultra Ball out and evolve up the Galvantula, which means that there's now not this free 1 prize for me anymore. So yeah, that misplay a little bit earlier on in the game is actually costing me here, because now I'm still going to probably have to go through 2 EX Pokemon rather than being able to take the free 30 HP Joltik at some point during the game. Would have been a bit better, like, obviously because Joe knocked out my earlier Munkidori, it made it all harder anyway, but there was obviously still a line for me to be able to do that if I just had done the damage to the Iron Hands instead of the Miraidon. So that's some good learning for me. That's some good learning for me there. And yeah, Joe's actually even able to use a 1-prizer to take out the Mew and go down to 2 prizes and still have Iron Hands as a threat on the bench. So I'm going to have to attack with a 1-prizer here. Sorry, a 2-prizer here to ensure that Iron Hands doesn't just win the game immediately. Realistically, it's probably going to have to be a Gardevoir. Because Miraidon... well, there's no great ways of accelerating in this deck, so Joe is almost certainly going to be attacking with Miraidon. With Iron Hands rather than Miraidon, but yeah, so I think the best thing I can do this turn is probably Gust KO the Mew with Gardevoir, and if I can weave an Iono into that as well to get Joe's hand down to 2, then I can hopefully win on the following turn. So do I have an Iono? That's the big question of this turn. I have a counter catcher, so I'm able to counter catch the Mew up. And hopefully take some draw away from Joe. Yep. Drawing some cards first, that's important. Draw your cards first, assess all your options first, then play the effects that are powerful. Super Rodding. I think I had put another Munkidori down at this point, so if I am able to... This is interesting, actually. If I am able to find second Dark Energy or Night Stretcher here, which is why I only put one Dark Energy, shuffled one Dark Energy back into the deck. If I'm able to find both, I'm actually able to Gust KO the Iron Hands. And if I Gust KO the Iron Hands, Joe has no attackers, right? So, well, he can still KO the Jellicent, but it's kind of the same. It's kind of... Oh, actually, it probably isn't that different. So, Gust KOing the Mew, or Gusting the Mew was right here, even though I wanted to find double Munkidori. Gusting the Mew was right here to try and get rid of Joe's draw. Yeah, I did play the Iono. I don't know whether you caught it, but I Iono'd before counter catching and then was like, no, this is stupid. I should just take the draw Pokemon right now and try and stop Joe from winning the game. Joe does have Arven though for Prime Catcher for game, so weren't able to close that one out unfortunately, but did at least get to see some item locking gameplay, which is kind of what the deck is all about and something that we wanted to see as part of the video to see how important Jellicent can be, or Frillish and Jellicent can be in the early turns of the game. So we've just seen some battles there with the new Jellicent Gardevoir. I don't think we got to show off too much Jellicent action, but I do think we were able to still prove that even adding in a bit of a clunky version of item locking into the deck still can function. We're obviously only a turn or two away from winning the couple of games that we lost, and we're able to take a game as well. A couple of misplays on my part. I'm definitely not a particularly good Guardy player either, so I think there were definitely lines in the games we lost as well. I'm still not sold on Jellicent being the way to play it, but I think this was good enough for me to feel like I want to explore it a little bit more, and I think definitely when we get the cards on live, it's going to be interesting to see whether people adopt this, and this does end up, like I say, becoming the way to play Gardevoir going forward. I really like what Jellicent can do in terms of providing item lock on a big body, even just what Frillish can do and providing item lock on a bigger body than Budgie. It means that you can actually, like I say, win those wars with other item locking decks and try and essentially cause more issues with item lock yourself, whilst actually being able to accelerate your game plan and take some prizes as well. So yeah, pretty interesting deck. I'm not 100% sold yet, but I do feel it was at least convincing that we were able to play some games and still develop a Gardevoir engine, whilst technically having less good cards in the deck, because we've had to make space for 2/2 Jellicent rather than just a single Budgie and a couple of other cards we've cut here and there. So yeah, pretty impressive stuff. Going to be hoping to play a bit more of this once the deck comes out on live. I'm going to be doing lots of streams, lots of videos, preparing your awful world. So thank you so much for watching. I've been Jack from OmniPoke, and I look forward to seeing you guys in another video tomorrow.